Well, I'm here with Sean Ahmed, the director of R&D for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, great to see you. Always love seeing you. Annual tradition.
Yeah, and we've known each other for a while. And I didn't even know what your role was until recently. Someone was like, oh, yeah, he was when he was with the Cubs. He was a writer for the Cubs.
Yeah.
So that's kind of fun, a brother in the craft.
That's right.
Tell me a little bit about coming from what was the writing, what were you doing before the Cubs, and how do you get from writing for the Cubs into R&D? Tell me a little bit about your backstory.
Yeah, well, whenever I talk about my background, it like reveals just like a generational shift. And when I graduated from college, it was 2006, and the advice at the time was break into the game any way you can and then move over. And I didn't even at the time necessarily know that a baseball operations path was there or anything like that. I knew I wanted to work in baseball. And in college, I was an economics major with a Latin American studies minor, and I wrote for the newspaper and podcast and worked with the baseball team there. And so it was my baseball major. I just loved baseball. And at the time with the Cubs, when I interned with them in 2007, kind of the spring after college, there was probably only 5-6 interns across the entire organization. And now it's easy to have that many like video interns with a baseball organization, let alone R&D interns, let alone et cetera. So I started in a publications and creative services department. I wrote, I edited.
That's like the Cubs magazine?
Yeah, it was the Cubs internal magazine. And you also work on
internal. So not like something that went out to.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was the in-house magazine that went out to people. Yeah, so it was called Vine Line. And actually some people with the athletic side of Sharma wrote for it. He was a freelancer for us. Kevin Goldstein was a freelancer. Jason Parks. So,
no way.
Yeah. And then
Jason Parks is now the scouting director for.
Yeah, the pro scouting director for the Diamondbacks. And I worked with him at the Cubs. And
Goldstein's it was just, with the Twins now.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Just saw him a little bit ago. Yeah. So yeah, I broke in that way and did that. As an intern. I then, while waiting for a full-time job to materialize, I interned with the White Sox spring training. After that, the last year in Tucson, Ozzie Guillen was the manager. It was a fun experience to be around and learn.
What sort of intern were you? What sort of title was it?
It was a media relations and baseball operations intern, just for spring training.
Wow.
It was just for spring training. It was kind of like a baseball information internship.
Yeah.
I mean, this is 2008. This is revealing what 2008, 2007 is versus now, how highly specialized these are.
Right.
So yeah, I got my first spring training experience, got my first experience with a different organization. And while I was there, I got a full-time offer from the Cubs to return to them to that publications department as an associate editor, and did that for kind of 3+ years after that. And then as the Cubs were changing ownership, I ended up getting thrown a business kind of project, like a business analytics project. It just kind of worked my way, and it was from a new VP of I forgot the exact title, but kind of business strategy, who had come in, Alex Sugarman, and through working through that, they realized I had this skill set that was not exactly congruous with exactly what I was doing, and I can go in the rest of the way, but it kind of grew from there that I eventually kind of started leaning more into the
got
analytics.
An interview out of it, and it was a good project. It was like a resume builder, and
it basically just it kind of opened the perspective and the door to there might be a career path this way. And once
for you as well as the organization.
Yeah, exactly. And what I ended up doing is I leaned really hard into going for that because I was clear I didn't want to do it on the business side. At that point, I was clear I wanted to be on the baseball side.
Right.
And so I ended up quitting my job and just focusing on essentially getting my code up to speed. I figured it would take about 3 to 6 months to get a yes or a no. And because it took a while to get a R&D department in place, it actually took 2 years. And but
that sounds familiar.
Yeah, exactly. It's classic baseball. One way or another, you're waiting a long time until something materializes. And so I got my code up to speed. It taught me, what it meant to build a model, productionalize it. The fact that you're going to get an answer that you have 3 hours to answer, and you have a model in place. You probably learned this from things like Stuff Plus and things
Yeah.
like that. So yeah, and then 2014 joined the Cubs full time as a analyst, assistant in the R&D department, and spent the next 6 years with them.
You're now with the Pirates, so you've seen 3 different organizations. If I can put you back in those shoes, and I don't actually know which shoes to put you in, if it's the editor, if it's doing that business project, or if it's just sort of early in the process, was there a moment where you were surprised about something? Or you were like, oh, I thought they all had their crap together, they don't, or whatever it was, was there some sort of general surprise that you had early on in your career in baseball?
Yeah, I would point to one that was early on that I think was really important then. And I actually tell people it's really important now. Just like when you're young and trying to get in the game, it's how different organizations can be culturally, the people, the structure. The White Sox at the time versus the Cubs, very different. And good and bad, or strengths and weaknesses, they're just different. And I think now what's so important, it's not an easy game to just like move around or get a job in any particular spot. You can't always just like get this exposure to multiple areas. But I think recognizing that not all organizations are structured equally, have the same sort of people, and ultimately hopefully finding your best match and a good culture and all that. So I think that's why I always go back to yeah, I guess that would be my number one.
Well, the thing about also what you just said about how different the internship structures were back then and how they are now, and that someone said to you, it almost sounded like you were saying that this isn't true anymore. That just get your foot in the door and then you can move around. Do you think it's harder to move around within an organization now?
I think so now, and I think that's a reality of the fact that like baseball has just becomes more specialized. It needs more expertise. The problems are more challenging. The scale of the organizations is bigger. So at the time, there was so much where being a generalist was what you had to be. You had to be able to tackle a bunch of different problems.
Front offices were smaller and
exactly.
Yeah.
So you needed someone who could tackle everything. And so, I don't think it was an easy path even then. Like for me, it was dramatic. I had to quit and like focus on doing and move over. So I wouldn't represent it as easy then or anything like that.
I didn't mean to.
No, or any easier or more natural. But I think now.
But like, did you like imagine like somebody who's as like a sales rep for tickets, who got into the organization because they wanted to be in baseball operations, and like how much would have to kind of align and how much luck would be involved even within the organization. You're already in the organization. It would still take a tremendous amount of luck to end up in baseball operations, to get that chance to show something, or to, what I mean? Like it took that project landing on your doorstep to kind of, let people know. Right.
Yeah.
And that's not maybe in today's larger front offices with more specialized roles, not going to happen as often,
Exactly. And just the threshold for getting an R&D job these days is higher than it used to be. It's higher than when I had it. You have to be a great programmer. You benefit from, if you've already published, great education, things like that. It's even.
Well, this segues pretty well. Yeah. You're hiring all the time. I mean, I'm not. You're hiring most of the time. I mean, as an organization, people are hiring all the time. I'm not talking specifically, but maybe if you want to talk specifically, if you were hiring, what sort of skills would you be looking for? If you are hiring, what sort of skills are you looking for? Like what is in demand for you specifically or generally?
Yeah. Well, I think for us, what's clear to me is we are growing R&D group. Last year, we relaunched was our baseball informatics department as a research and development department. And with that, some new focuses, some new skill sets we're trying to bring on. One thing I'll say that we're always in search for, and right now, this year, we absolutely have been growing the space is engineering. There's so much data out there. Engineering is one of your keys to not only getting the data in and making it available to your researchers, data scientists, and analysts. It's also the way you kind of scale the work, right? Because you don't have one analyst for every single, coach, player, front office executive who's demanding information. So you got to scale what you do. But then also,
is that also because you have so many different ways the data comes in? So you have, the TrackMan, the Hawkeye, the Blast, the thing, and you have to organize process. You have to have processes that organize those things so you can you can house them in one place and then distribute them.
Yeah, and just automate it, right? And just have it so that you have the latest data as soon as possible. Because if your coaches are expecting to have insights from the previous night's game the next morning so they can discuss it with the pitcher, that data has to be in your warehouse, has to be run through models and already available to them.
Sometimes cleaned.
Yeah,
exactly. Because it's not always correct right off the bat.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. And so engineering is oftentimes a more thankless job, but it's such a foundational, important backbone job.
Is that one that can actually lead to other things down the road? It's not as siloed. It's not as like, that can lead to an R&D position. That can lead to, other types of projects in the future if you get your foot in the door that way.
Yeah, for us, it is actually R&D, and for the Cubs, it was too. And I think always, in most cases, we do have kind of like a research wing and a systems wing, and systems would have the engineering, but
they're doing this. They're doing the same work, so sometimes you can just shift projects almost, right?
Yeah, I think there are ways. I've also found people who really love it, right? And sometimes it just depends on, do you like an open-ended project? Like, are you a researcher who is comfortable with the fact that you're looking for insights, but you might never land on it? You might never get to an answer.
How would you play baseball on the moon?
Yeah,
that's my example for that.
We haven't gotten there yet. Maybe 2024 finally. But for engineers, there's a lot of satisfying things because you can have, if you have a vision for your internal web app, then engineering solutions that
this is a thing that we are actually going to get to.
Yeah,
we're going to be
code
able to
something,
do this.
You create it, you see it,
it's
others
tangible.
get to,
yeah,
and other
true.
things like that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, we're looking for data scientists. That's like a big focus for us, and what I mean by that are really like broad skills. It's broad in terms of the total types of skill sets, but really like an expertise. So,
are there any keywords, like Python? Like, are there certain requirements, or can someone be in R versus Python? Like, do you prefer one of these things, or?
For us, R and Python, one or the other is all we ask. And I am a believer that if you've learned to program in one language, you oftentimes can learn another, right? So I try not to like draw too hard of a line or fine of a box, because I think a lot of that you can learn later. But what I'm looking for now, because the baseball challenges, the data challenges, the research demands are so much higher than they used to be. I'm looking for a team of experts, and technical adds, culture adds to the team, as opposed to the unicorn or the generalist that can just do it all. So now I think and I think this is where baseball is, but not every other sport. As you've scaled this out, you don't need 20 people who are all capable of doing a little bit of everything. You benefit when you have the physics PhD working alongside someone who's great at machine learning or statistics and stuff like that, and they learn from each other. They can tackle different problems, and they can ultimately push us forward.
Yeah. I refer to organizations as tankers. I mean, you've got room for a lot of different people. They're huge organizations, are getting bigger and bigger. And, but the good of that is you can push through some really great projects and do some really cool things. And, baseball teams are doing things internally that I think might surprise people in a good way. Like, baseball teams almost have stuff that's on par with like a Slack. They're building internal communication softwares and like doing really cool big projects because they're big. But the flip side is, if you want to change a team, if you're trying to build something, or if you're trying to move it from one sort of mindset to another, that the tanker can be really hard, gets stuck in the canal, or has to do the 800-point turn. So tell me a little bit about, changing. You've been a part of two organizations that were in the midst of change, and changing culture, changing an organization. And I know I don't need the specifics because that's hard, but just sort of generally what it's like, what the job is like when you're trying to turn the tanker, basically.
Yeah, I think the term you use, stuck, is one of the key words. Like, culture change can get stuck. So you can sometimes like reorient yourself. You can tackle some low hanging fruit. You can make some strides a year or two in. but it's really easy for it to get stuck, and it's a competitive industry, and you can find yourself being passed pretty easily. I've benefited from with the Cubs when I started in 2014. Some people who were incredible at building culture, and a culture that was driven to win. When it happens was the slogan, and we all kind of built a culture where we believed that if we all beat the 29 other people in our job, then that was going to lead into something special. And I think also just a philosophy of you get the right people on the bus and then you figure out where they sit. So just get great people, always hire smarter than you are and hire different. And now also benefit from a GM in Pittsburgh, Ben Charrington, who's super thoughtful about culture and the importance of culture and collaboration. And I think it, again, benefits from you get just great people on board who are motivated to do good things, who do bring a different technical or culture or perspective, add to the team. And that can like yield things that avoid you getting stuck, avoid you either not being able to get to new answers or just eventually just seeing too uniformly and not like challenging each other enough to achieve greater things. So I think it's hard. I mean, you can have the perfect process and you might not see results, right? That's sports. That's in reality sports. So it's very easy to get stuck if you're not constantly pushing that engine.
Yeah, and it's hard because you hire good people, and if you do start to have that success, then you get poached, and so you have to keep hiring. Like the work doesn't really end that way. You just got to keep trying, keep working towards it. Just keep hiring good people.
It's happened to us, and it's a great thing. And to me, it's also, I'm an internal optimist with it's always also new opportunity, right? There's so many compelling people in this game. You meet them all the time. We see them around the halls here, and we see public work people are doing or private with teams. And so there's a lot of great people out there. I try to get as many of them in-house with us, kind of producing with each other, driven to do and achieve a really hard thing, which is make a winner.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. Thank you so much for coming on, Sean. It was great to see you as always.
Thanks, Eno. Good luck this week. Always good to see you.
Yeah.